During the last 500 years, contact between white civilization and remote tribes has followed two routes, both with disastrous consequences for indigenous peoples. Today, when most tribes are reluctant about contact with outsiders, explorer Sebastian Tirtirau travels around the world, asking them what kind of future they want to build. Sebastian and the team meet up in Vietnam for their first contact with the Hmong tribes. He's taken along two of his most experienced volunteers, Vali and Gabi. In Vietnam, the Hmong tribes are located in the northern part of the country, close to the Chinese border. Sebastian has devised an itinerary that will begin in Saigon, then take us almost 1,100 miles up the Vietnamese coast, through Halong Bay and towards Hanoi. From here, we'll make our way to Sapa, 250 miles northwest, where we hope to find the Hmong tribes. Saigon is a huge metropolis with over 8 million people. Nowadays, it's called Ho Chi Minh City, after the communist leader whose influence triggered the anti-American war of the 70s. Even though it was integrated into communist Vietnam in 1975, Saigon still preserves a resolutely capitalist identity and generates over 20% of the country's GDP. A sizable part of it is created on the street by small businesses. The city is in constant motion. It's been estimated that there are almost 4 million motorcycles in Saigon alone, generating traffic which works according to rules that are comprehensible only to the drivers themselves. Even though Saigon has pedestrian crossings, pedestrians have no rights whatsoever, and the only way to cross the street is to bravely set off, right through the middle of the traffic. If you keep your cool, the motorcycles will somehow manage to avoid you, as well as one another.
Apparently there are about 4.5 million motorbikes on the road, only in Ho Chi Minh. But very soon we noticed that in spite of apparent chaos to this system, there is quite an interesting order to the bikers in this country. Everybody looks out for the other person, for the other rider, which means that in the end, when everybody looks out for the other, the result is pretty good because there are very little accidents here, very few accidents in Vietnam compared to the amount of motorbikers that are on the road. Apparently about 30 people a day die in Vietnam from motorbike accidents, which is very, very low statistic comparing to North America, where they're much higher for a much less population of bikers.
The city is located on the Saigon River, which flows into the Mekong Delta, Vietnam's main commercial waterway. Most people in the river area are in the fishing business. They usually live in small floating houses on the river. This way they can fish all day long. The fish is collected in boats and transported to the fish market. Here it gets sorted by hand based on size. After being weighed, it's sold wholesale. smaller fish are used for making the famous fish sauce, which is essential to Vietnamese cuisine. Saigon has a bustling nightlife. The bikers are still out in force, even after nightfall, and all the stores are open until late. Most people usually serve all 3 meals of the day out in the street. While during the day food is eaten quickly, during the evening everyone has time to relax and to enjoy their meal. The terraces are full and the food is cooked out on the street itself. We're looking for motorcycles to take us across the country from the south to the north in search of the Hmong tribes. In Vietnam, as in the rest of Asia, you can find counterfeit versions of almost all the Western brands, sometimes with slightly altered names and at much lower prices, on sale alongside the originals. We don't have too many options, so we buy a few Cuptom motorcycles, copies of the Honda 125cc, for $1,000 apiece. We hope that they'll make the 1,500-mile journey that's ahead of us.
I'm a biker. I love motorbikes, and from all the blogs on the internet of people that have done it, they said you have to see it by motorbike. It's a unique experience to ride in a place like Ho Chi Minh City, and around you have 20,000 bikers, and they sit around and talk to you or wave at you because you're both on 2 wheels.
While Saigon is dominated by the billboards of large corporations, the further north you travel, and particularly in rural areas, the powerful hold of the Communist Party becomes apparent. Even though the economy is becoming increasingly reliant on the principles of the free market, similar to those upheld in China, the political realm is still under the control of the Communist Party. The party's 13th Congress will soon take place, providing all the more reasons for propaganda. Most people in the countryside work in agriculture. Rice is the main cultivated food. Thanks to the warm and humid climate, people can work in the field throughout the year. While some are sowing, others are harvesting. After being harvested, the rice is spread out to dry on the roadsides. The national rice output far surpasses domestic needs, which is why Vietnam has become the second largest rice exporter in the world, after Thailand. Our long journey across the coast reveals the locals' diligence and ingenuity. The party's liberalization of the economy in 1986 has stimulated private ownership, and lots of small businesses have sprung up. Right now, Vietnam has one of the fastest growing economies in the world. Flat coastal areas have been transformed into sea salt farms. Seawater is allowed to flood the terraces, and once it has evaporated, the salt is collected and stored in warehouses. Farms can be seen on every step of our journey, with shrimp, fish and duck being extremely popular. Many farmers raise ducks, a staple Vietnamese food, which they then ship into town in order to sell at better prices. The past few years have seen a boom in tourism. Foreigners have begun to liberate themselves from the preconceived notions generated by the war and the subsequent propaganda, and have started to visit the extraordinary sites in Vietnam. One such place is Halong Bay, 150 miles away from Hanoi. Its remarkable beauty put it on the UNESCO Heritage Site list in 1994. The resort has developed even more since then, and today is one of the favorite tourist destinations in the Far East. The bay consists of a dense cluster of over 2,000 spectacular monolithic limestone islands. An entire fleet of small ships has developed in order to transport the tourists from one island to the next. Caves can be found on some of the islands, containing numerous large stalactites and stalagmites. A community of around 1,600 people lives in 4 fishing villages in Halong Bay. They live on floating homes and sustain their existence by selling fish to the visitors and to the small businesses in the resort. Even though this is an extraordinary place, we can't stay for too long and must continue our journey north, where Sebastian is about to have his first contact with the Hmong.
It is one of the few countries that I've ever been in my life where I haven't seen beggars on the road. Or when they see you, a foreigner or a white man, getting out of the car or on a motorbike, in Africa, for example, they come around you and they start asking for things. Please buy things or give us things. Nobody here ever bothered us on this road and treated us like tourists. They served us, they didn't increase the price, they didn't, we put gas in small villages, they didn't pull up the price because we were white. The food on the small restaurants we stopped or the small guest houses was not hiked when they saw us. Everything stayed the same as for the local people. This really impressed me. There's virtually, we didn't feel any time threatened in this country. Night, day, in the middle of the big crowd, nobody really wanted to harm us.
Our route passes through Hanoi, the country's capital, which we reach 5 days after our departure from Saigon. Vietnam was colonized by France in the mid-19th century. As we pass through the center, you can see the influence of French architecture, as lots of the buildings are replicas of important buildings in Paris. Another important foreign intervention was by the US during the Vietnam War, which ended with the victory of the North Vietnamese communists in 1975. The most important figure of Vietnamese communism, Ho Chi Minh, died in 1969 and lies in a mausoleum in the center of the city. Even today, half a century after his death, the tomb attracts thousands of visitors. Many of them are children brought straight from school to see the embalmed body of the great leader. For Sebastian, a visit like this would bring back unpleasant memories of the torture he was subjected to by the communists in his youth. Instead, he decides to take a tour of the Hanoi Ethnology Museum. Here, he hopes to learn more about the Hmong tribes, who he'll be encountering in just a few days. Except for some pictures and traditional household items, we don't come across too much information about the Hmong. The regime decided to isolate this community because of the part they played during the war, when many of them fought on the side of the Americans. Even today, the authorities regard the Hmong tribes as dangerous and keep them under close observation. We can only hope that this won't affect our attempts to strike up a friendship with them.
I'm not sure exactly how deep this goes, but being in Vietnam and understanding a little bit of the system, because I come up from that system as well, I understand that there's a lot of regulations and control in this country of the remote tribes.
It's the monsoon season and it rains every day, but this doesn't put anything on hold. It's the 1,000-year anniversary of the founding of Hanoi, and the city has been decorated for the celebrations. Life in Vietnam goes on until late at night and starts again early, before dawn. For many of the inhabitants of Hanoi, every morning starts with daily exercises. The streets downtown are taken over by people, young and old, who go about their fitness regime. Some limit themselves to walking at a brisk pace, but most gather in groups and perform aerobics to music. After the morning workout, the city begins to return to normal. Most of its inhabitants are merchants and traders. The Vietnamese economy doesn't rely on quality, but quantity, something that's apparent on any street corner. You get the impression that everyone is buying or selling something. What they're selling isn't important. What matters is that everything is sold in bulk, whether it's t-shirts for $1 or kitschy ornaments. Markets spontaneously crop up on the streets throughout the morning. This is where small-time entrepreneurs come looking for supplies. During this season, it's around 35 degrees Celsius during the day, with over 70% humidity, which is why food needs to be very fresh, or if possible, still alive. Everything gets eaten in Vietnam as long as it's fresh. After stocking up, most business owners open small restaurants on the streets. Noodle soup is usually sold in the morning, and we try to blend in. Many of these travelling kitchens are illegal, and the owners are always ready to disappear in a matter of seconds, merchandise and all, should somebody announce the arrival of the police. Only a few hours later, Sebastian and his team will resume their journey towards Sapa, where he hopes to encounter the Hmong tribes. An oil change and a spot of maintenance will help keep trouble at bay during the last leg of our journey. Most of the locals are more interested in our motorcycles than our cameras. To us, it's a cheap copy, but to them it represents a small fortune, especially compared to their scooters. The road from Hanoi to Sapa is about 250 miles long and filled with hairpin bends.
I would have liked to come with a cruiser, with a bigger bike, maybe 1100cc, 1200cc. But all recommendations were to buy Vietnamese bikes. Small, fast, you go around, they use little gas, and in big crowds, a big bike would really make you suffer. And it was a great decision. Our little bikes are Chinese bikes, Cup Toms. They took us almost 3,000 kilometers, over 2,500, 2,600 kilometers from Ho Chi Minh to Sapa. Two of us on one bike, and Gabi and huge amount of bags on his bike.
The closer we get to the mountains, the colder and wetter the climate becomes. The next day, terraced rice fields tell us we're a short distance away from Sapa. We've already found out a great deal about Vietnam, and we're hoping the experience we've acquired travelling across the country will help us in befriending the Hmong.
When you read the propaganda in the world about traveling to Vietnam, Southeast Asia, Cambodia, and Laos, and so forth, you get conflicting reports. National Geographic says some things. You go on the U.S. government sites, they say all sorts of awarenesses and stuff like that, and be aware and be careful and so forth. For me, with my experience of traveling through so many countries, the best way to discover a country is to see it. Is to eat at the local people, is to sleep in the local villages or whatever you sleep at. So in the end, by the time I reached to the remote tribe that I want to reach, I have a feel and an idea of what these people think or their way of life. And I did it, and I'm very happy I did it. Because by the time now I'm here in Sapa, and I'm meeting these very amazing, unique people of the Red Hmong, the Black Hmong, the Dao, and so forth. I have a background experience of what the Vietnamese people are, what they eat, how they cook food, how they treat their children, how they ride motorbikes. And I will write about this, so people that come to visit Vietnam, they will also have my point of view. Vietnam is a beautiful destination for people to visit. I will recommend it with all my heart to everybody.
One of the best ways to get to know people is through play. On all his travels, Sebastian never misses the opportunity to play soccer with the locals. Sapa is the place where we're supposed to make our first contact with the Hmong tribes. The town isn't all that big, and yet there are lots of hotels and guest houses, most of them filled with tourists from Western countries. Ho Chi Minh is still an ever-present image, even in these secluded places. Without his image presiding over them, these children probably wouldn't be getting such a good education. Many tourists are drawn by the spectacular landscape, as well as by the food and the tours of the nearby tribal villages. The Hmong have realized that tourists are a good source of money and make themselves readily available. There are Hmong women actively seeking out tourists all over town. As a matter of fact, if you reach Sapa, it's impossible not to come across them. They're everywhere, following tourists around and trying to sell them vegetables, textiles, and handmade objects. Many of them are aware of the fact that Western tourists are drawn to everything handmade, and they produce their fabrics there on the spot in order to attract interest.
I'm not sure what to expect. I'm not sure what to expect. From the first look at this, the tourists are very interested in the Hmong culture and the Hmong pictures and souvenirs and so forth. In my experience, this is both positive and not so positive. Positive because it gives them a way of survival, a way of life. People sell their souvenirs, they can buy some other things that they need. Not so positive because tourists have a way of teaching the people to be dependent on an industry like this.
I want a village without tourists. Just your people know.
Okay, my village not tourist. My village not tourist. My village is out there.
Your village not tourist.
Not
Are you
tourist.
sure?
Yes.
No white people.
No white people.
No white people.
No white people.
Just you.
Yeah, just my village. Maybe local people.
How long can we stay there?
5 kilometers.
So how many days can we stay in your village?
You can stay for 2 days or like that.
For a week? 7 days?
Yeah, you can live for you want.
What's your name?
Mine.
My name is Sebastian.
3,800 people live in my village.
3,800. And no tourists?
Not tourists, just local one house people living there.
The reason I'm here,
Yeah,
it's not to be a tourist.
yeah,
I don't want to be a tourist.
okay,
They come, they buy from you and they go.
yeah,
We work in Africa and many other places around the world, and we
Yeah.
help people like
Yeah.
your people. Very remote tribes in the hills, or in the jungles, or in the mountains.
yeah,
And we go there, we spend about a week or 10 days. We talk to the local people. We ask them what they need, what would they need from help,
yeah,
and then we bring help.
yeah,
Do you think your village would like that?
yeah, they like
They
that.
would like that?
Yeah, they would like that.
We learn that Mai's village isn't far from Sapa, but it's remote in the sense that they don't get visitors. The authorities have a very strict stance towards the Hmong because of their dissident activities during the war. They only allow tourists to a few villages which they select and can easily control. We've reached Mai's home, around 20 kilometers from Sapa, and were warmly welcomed by her family.
So Mai,
Yeah,
this is your family?
yeah.
Okay. I want to know their names, even of the children. So you are Mai? Any other name?
My first name,
Mai?
Giang Thị Mai.
Zanki Mai?
Yes.
Okay. And who's this lady?
Sister-in-law.
Sister-in-law.
A lot, sister.
In-law.
My brother,
Yes,
wife.
yes.
sister.
And what's the name?
Also my too.
My too.
Okay, my one, my two.
Yeah.
And where are the red Hmong?
No, we don't have a red moon.
Nothing
we
here.
have a flower moon.
Flower Hmong. Yes. I heard about that.
Flower moon, we just have a in Baha market.
And what's the difference?
We have a different because we have flower moon, we have a black girl, and we have everything black. And the flower moon that have a skirt that have a many flower, make it different color.
Ah, okay. And they speak the same language?
Yeah, same and bit.
Men can marry Zhao girl
Yeah.
or Hmong. They marry only Hmong people.
Yeah, now that change. They can marry
They
together
marry,
and they have to change, speak or change everything.
What about Hmong with Vietnamese?
Because Vietnamese girls, they're very clever, they know how to do everything, so they want to need a man more money and want to marry rich people.
No, you are very rich girl. Very
Smart.
smart. Very smart, very intelligent. You speak better English than even the girls in Hanoi.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good English here. Better here than in Hanoi, Ho Chi Minh.
Now because in the Ho Chi Minh and Hanoi, they learn from the school.
Yeah.
Now we are here, we learn from the church.
Yeah. Better. And because you don't speak Vietnamese, your accent is better.
Yeah, we also speak Vietnamese, but we speak local and English also a little bit.
Easier, yeah. This is also a tribe that lives way up there in the cold. Only ice. You have to dress big fur so you get warm because otherwise it's very cold. That's their home. This is what they eat. Raw meat, raw fish. That's in Africa, Bushman.
Oh, too old.
Old. She doesn't know how old.
Oh, she doesn't know how old.
See?
Oh,
Congo, Africa.
Africa? Oh, they don't have a clothes.
No
Boy or
clothes, no.
Girl?
Girl, yeah, doesn't matter. That's Congo to Africa. See?
Yeah.
Pygmies, very small people too.
Very
Also,
small people?
Very small people.
Yeah, maybe.
See, tribes everywhere.
Yeah.
This is where we go. We go everywhere. Children. See, hunters.
They speak English?
Some of them speak English, yes. They hunt with spears and bows.
They're fighting or not?
No, not with them, just animals. They're very peaceful people, just like Hmong.
This is Sebastian's first contact with the tribe, and he wants to learn as many things as possible about their way of life. The best way to learn these things is to get involved in their daily activities. This mountainous area favours the cultivation of rice on terraces. It rains a lot here, and the rain is easily redirected towards each of the paddy fields, which lessens their workload. Today, Mai's family is planting the rice sprouts on one of the terraces that's been prepared for sowing. It seems that moving around with a basket full of rice on your back isn't the easiest of tasks.
Go together like free now. So we take it in this plant, we need the water, so later we have very blue color. Yes,
So you take this is indigo, and you dry it, or you put it like this in the water? You dry it first?
We kept this plant pour in the water.
After we've planted the rice, Mai takes us to visit her aunts to show us how their famous Hmong fabrics are made.
This is how you start,
Yeah.
right?
First we start like that.
With this.
Yeah, so
And then you go like this
Yeah, you
all the
go,
way
yeah.
around
yeah.
until it comes like this.
Yeah.
And this is, and then it turns out.
This already dried the indigo, very new.
Ah, this is new.
Yeah, make it like the one clove, you see?
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
make it for the clove.
And this, okay, yes, you're already sewing this.
Yeah.
And this is colored with the plant.
Yeah, very blue color. You can wash it and you can make it.
Yeah, look. It's coming out.
Yeah, not finished.
Not finished, yes. So this comes like this.
Yeah,
Very nice.
very nice. This are Mama make it.
You make it?
Yeah.
Yes. And I like the...
You see very small.
Oh yeah.
Smell
It smells,
indigo.
smells like indigo, like plant, yeah.
The famous Hmong textiles are all handmade. Mai's aunt is preparing the hemp using a traditional method. This is a dangerous activity, as the rock weighs around 50 pounds and can easily break the woman's legs if she mishandles it. This process softens the hemp. The resulting fibres are then connected together and wound onto reels. The reels are spun into twine and then set out to dry in the sun. Soon this hemp will be woven, dyed dark indigo, and assembled into a beautiful coat which will then be sold in the city market for around $100. It might seem like a lot of money, but such a coat may take about 1 month of work for an entire family. The Hmong tribes have been populating these areas since the mid-18th century. They came from the neighbouring Chinese mountains, prompted by political unrest and in search of more arable land. Today there are over 1.2 million Hmong in Vietnam. Out of these, 3,800 people live in Mai's village, but they don't get to see too much of each other. Their homes are scattered across the mountains, and only close families are grouped together. Their lives revolve around the rice fields. While the women go to town and wear traditional garments, most Hmong men no longer wear traditional clothing as they find European styles more practical. Although they help with the household chores, the men's main job is to work in the rice fields. Water buffaloes are very important here in the mountain terraces, but they don't adapt very well to this cold climate. Few survive up here, so they're very expensive to buy. Mai told us there are informants in every village who go and report everything to the police. It seems that our presence has already been noticed.
Once we started to develop a relationship with them, we discovered that we are not allowed to sleep over at night in this village. Apparently there are several villages that are designed to accept tourists. They come 1 or maximum 2 days to sleep in. They buy their crafts and then they move on, but they're all under the control of a travel agent or a guide. We didn't want to do that. We wanted to discover the Hmong people within their lifestyle without the influence of tourists. So we found this village. We found this amazing guide, Mai, who is very intelligent, very smart, and very, very willing to show us her village and her family and so forth.
The next day, Mai and her sister Matisi hike up the mountains to inspect the crops and gather some vegetables for the family lunch. She's 20 years old and still unwed, which is rare in the world of the tribes. It seems the Western trend of delaying marriage has started to affect attitudes around here too. She's one of the more courted girls, and her parents hope to receive around $600 for her. Most girls are married off for close to $200. The Hmong grow hemp and corn everywhere in the nearby mountains, which is why most of the forests have been cut down.
This is what they grow here for their clothes. They're making special clothes. It's a very long process, and they dye it with a special plant to make it blue, the traditional Hmong color. This is actually marijuana. It's widespread all over the place. It's very amazing that nobody smokes it because they only use it for their clothes. It smells delicious.
From the top of the mountain we can see the stunning landscape that surrounds us, and we also notice that Sapa is quite close to their village. Sometimes the men do the cooking. Zato, Matisi's husband, is preparing lunch today. While the women were out gathering vegetables, he slaughtered a piglet. Pigs are important animals for the Hmong, and the fact that he's killed one means that we are honored guests.
I discovered in their village with their family that they're still the same. They don't change face for the tourists. Many tribes I've been to, they have a face for the tourists to sell crafts and take pictures. They go home, they're different people. These people are very gentle and very nice within their own circles as well. And that is one thing that impressed me with the Hmong tribe. Secondly, I noticed that there is a very clear separation between men activities, men's responsibilities, and women's responsibility. I like how Mai put it, why men are home and women are selling crafts in the market. And she said that men are stronger, women are not, so we sell and they do the work.
Like in most Asian cuisines, the vegetables are only briefly dipped in hot water and aren't boiled in order to keep the nutrients inside. And of course, rice is present at every meal, as well as large quantities of chili. In order to tone down the chili, Zato chops it up in small pieces, sprinkles it with salt, and pours some hot vegetable broth on the top.
The fact that seeing complete strangers, they accepted into their home, and very nicely, Mai put it yesterday when we were having lunch in her family. I was saying thank you for the meal, and she said, so you see, we're eating in a family here. We never say thank you or please, because it's family. Family does whatever they want. So if you want to eat, no problem. You don't have to say thank you. If you want to go drink water, go drink water. You want to sleep, go sleep. You're a family, so you don't have to always thank us. And that's an amazing insight into their acceptance of who we are and what we do here, to let you open all their doors and invite you in. So that impressed me the most.
Nowadays, even the most remote tribes in Vietnam have access to electricity and foreign television channels. For the time being, TV is dominated by shows from their Chinese neighbors, but as Vietnamese society opens up, Hollywood might soon begin to market their values and lifestyles over here as well, just like everywhere else. The Hmong's first contact with Christianity was through Catholic missionaries in China in the early 17th century. Once they migrated south, they brought the new faith with them, and this is why many Hmong people go to the Catholic Church every Sunday, giving the authorities yet another reason to keep an eye on them. The following day, Sebastian senses a shift in Mai's attitude.
How are you?
Good, and you?
Good. So, what is happening?
So you go to where my brother?
Where's your brother?
My brother already go.
Already go?
Yeah.
It seems the authorities are less than happy with our presence here and have warned them about receiving us into their home. They're also threatening us with a heavy fine.
You have to pay about 10 million or 5 or something.
Okay.
Even though we're not convinced the authorities have the legal means to do anything to us, we know they can harm our friends in the Hmong tribe.
We discovered that we are not allowed to go there anymore. First reason apparently is that the police does not allow us to spend too much time in their village, because what Mai said is that their village doesn't see tourists. As I said, they are designated villages for tourists, and hers is not. Secondly, they also explained to us that some of the other villages or families on the mountain became jealous. They see us coming every day, eating with them, and filming and becoming friends with them, and they reported us to the police. So we have to be very careful not to create problems for their own village, and also not to create troubles with us in our development.
Sebastian knows how the communist system works and decides that the time has come for us to leave. We've just got time for one final meal.
I've encountered situations before in which you really can't leave a volunteer behind, maybe because of the local government situation or because of visas and politics and so forth. That's not a major problem for me. Because we know Mai and we have this friendship that we created between us, I will continue to help him through her, which means that anytime we want to do a project, I will send funding through her, and then she will continue to do this. I trust her fully. In every day that I interacted with her, I never had one sense that she's trying to take advantage of us because we're white and because we're foreigners and maybe we have money and so forth. She never had that intention or had that situation shown to me. So my plan to help him with buffaloes and roofs and education and healthcare can be done through somebody like her or maybe her brother and so forth. So they have possibility of receiving funds here, so it shouldn't be a problem.
Today, 2 years after filming this footage, Sebastian continues his work with other remote tribes around the world, continuing to apply the third way to reach remote tribes.